It all started in 1994. The fighting game scene changed forever when SNK released King of Fighters 94 in the arcades and the Neo Geo, introducing the concept of three-man teams rather than having one-on-one fights. The story begins, rather weirdly enough, with a team known as the Japan Team, which consisted of a guy named Kyo who could light himself on fire, a guy named Benimaru who could. There's now a new guy named Iori who happens to have this huge grudge against Kyo and his whole family, actually. Turns out there's this big old subplot going back about 300 to 400 years where this whole family civil war story sort of gets blown out of proportion as you find out that Iori's team, which originally had Billy Kane and Eiji Kusarigi from other series, have now been sort of left to the wayside, and we now have the secretaries from Rugal? I mean, this doesn't make any sense. And who in the world is Goenitz and whose parents named him that? They're part of a band, except that the 14-year-old is actually the embodiment of the freaking demon. So now you have to kill all three of these people. Iori goes absolutely bonkers for some bizarre reason with his bloodlust, kills both Mature and Vice. Kyo has to control both of them, and he has to, except for maybe his head. But that's not the biggest problem. Clones! Massive numbers of Kyo clones all over the world, and the guy who runs the Ikari team, Hydern, has no clue why in the world these guys are. Did the art get weird? I mean, I don't know what guy they hired or whatever, but my gosh, it's weird. And why in the world would you create a boss that hits you for 20 hits and takes off half your life? SNK, I know you guys have given us cheap bosses before, but Zero just really took the cake. And you know what? The art's really funky this time. But you know what? We find out why. The guy has a thing for Akira, because one of the guys looks like Kaneda, one of the guys looks like Tetsuo, and holy crap, the things get confusing from Hero team, except the guy who leads the team is a complete jerk. In fact, he's actually going after both Kyo, Iori, and Chizuru for their particular items that pertain to the Orochi saga. I'm not really even sure why, but all that Ash is involved in this big old subplot with time and things, and just why in the world is this thing here? The big boss just wants to rip everybody to shreds. At least this time, Ash is still trying to go. Why in the world do you have to involve time travel? Seriously, time travel is the worst thing that you could possibly involve yourself in. That just makes things even more confusing. Why? Because in that ending, the main hero slash villain of the game, Ash, is erased from the timeline and nobody knows why except for me. There is one hope and one constant. At least I hope that the story is less confusing this time. And I know for a fact that the SNK Superstars team will not be back. King of Fighters 14 was released in late August. Distributed by Atlas here in the States, SNK's venerable three-person team fighter tries to show us that it can also do what Capcom did about 7 years ago, have the main series jump for the first time into 3D. Yeah, we're just going to ignore Maximum Impact here. I mean, yeah, don't worry about it. Like I mentioned before, we still have three-person teams, and many of the old teams, and therefore characters, have come back from the last game. Surprisingly, King of Fighters 14 actually uses a concept from some of the older games, and brings back teams that represent a country, like the South American team, or the China team. Don't worry, you still get those weird and wacky teams, like the official invitation team? While there isn't much that's new in the mechanics, KOF 14 introduces the idea of canceling super moves into other super moves, including the advance cancel and the climax cancel. Let's be honest, all it really is timing super moves into other super moves, but it does add some strategy to the mix. The pace, much like its Capcom contemporary, seems to have been slowed down a little to make timing a little bit easier. I actually like this a lot, and it allows for different types of strategy, as well as a surprise or two when it actually works. One of the biggest concerns that I remember is that a jump from 2 dimensions to 3 would actually make the game look worse. As it turns out, the graphic artists took great care in making sure that the game didn't lose its look that it's cultivated over the years. Sure, it no longer looks like an anime anymore, but the game does look like they plucked the sprites and backgrounds from the Neo Geo and brought them into 3 dimensions, without any issues. In fact, this whole game screams King of Fighters 96, particularly the music. It's really clear that they drew a lot of inspiration from that particular game, and you occasionally get snippets of music or even whole tracks from that particular game. They'll even throw a complete curveball at you and take music from games that aren't even from the King of Fighters library. You know, I'm surprised that SNK made a King of Fighters game that felt like King of Fighters. I mean, they could have gone absolutely bonkers with this, off the wall. But you know what? They stayed the tried and true course, and they made something wonderful. But it's not like I don't have issues with the game. Remember that story I gave at the top of the video? Well, once again, it doesn't make any sense. While this is the setup for a new storyline, it just comes off as a little shoehorn. Antonov, the character who is the self-proclaimed King of Fighters, complete with championship belt, is a complete unknown with no relation to any of the prior storylines. Even remnants of the Bernstein family seem to have disappeared completely. And when the real boss shows up, it's just sort of explained that this was expected. You then blow up the Flaming Ogre from Tekken 3 ripoff, and you're done. The modes for online aren't limited, but what's odd is that the matchmaking seems really bad. Lag is a bit of a bigger issue compared to other fighting games, and it just throws me off. Of course, this could also be because I suck at fighting games compared to a lot of the audience that play these games in tournaments, so I tend to get destroyed anyway, and it makes me want to break controllers. If you are going to play online, try and play with friends who are hopefully around the same level as you, then try to get a little better. Otherwise, you're in for a huge rude awakening. The only other thing that I can think of are very small niggles that involve design choices. For instance, in the mission trials, when you complete the set of moves you need to do successfully, it says complete, but then abruptly opens the menu and gives you the choices for multiple things. Again, these choices are pretty small, but when you have to encounter them over and over again, it throws off the flow of the game. But you know what? This is King of Fighters. This is a game series where nothing makes sense when it comes to design and story. But now we finally come to that time again, folks. Finally, I'm asking the question again. Is King of Fighters 14 worth your holy crap, this box is big? The King of Fighters 14 starts at $60 both digitally and in the retail market, which includes both the regular and Steelbook editions. The Burn to Fight Collector's Edition I have, which includes the Steelbook, a 3-disc soundtrack, and an art book showcasing a lot of the King of Fighters 14 art that eventually became the 3D models and backgrounds, still retails around $80. This game is what a fighting game should contain. A fully fleshed, well, fleshed-ish story mode, different single-player modes, 50 different characters, a tutorial that allows you to figure out the basics of any character, in an online mode that I suck at, but at least it's more than playable. In fact, this whole game works in my mind, and it's worth about retail price. Fighting game fans and newcomers won't be disappointed with this purchase. When I went to Anime Expo earlier this year in July, I was really happy to see Atlas demoing King of Fighters 14 to the masses. Fast forward a couple of months later, and this game does not disappoint. It's got an extensive single-player mode, an online mode that works really well, provided you don't mind getting destroyed, and a whole bunch of features and extras in here that work right out of the box. Say what you will about its contemporaries. Say what you will about who's on top. In my mind, the future is now, and the king is back. Hey, it's me again. I know it's a little bit after the video and it's probably a little too late to ask for this, but SNK, Atlas, see this thing here? Yeah, that thing. Title belt. Yeah, the thing that Antonov's wearing. Is there any way to know if you're actually making one of these things? I'd like one. Yeah.